Do you like us to go into the questions today, Guru Maharaj, or is there anything on your mind you'd like
¿Le
to
gustaría
share?
comenzar con las preguntas o
Questions,
hay algo que
questions,
quisiera
questions.
All right.
compartir?
So
Preguntas,
the
preguntas,
first
preguntas. La
question
primera pregunta
is from Kanuram.
es de
If you'd like to
Kanuram.
mute yourself, Kanuram.
Good morning, Guru Maharaj.
Buenos días,
Good
Guru
morning.
Maharaj.
My question is actually like
Mi pregunta
an older one that I was actually
es
thinking
una
about a few
pregunta
weeks
antigua
ago
que
from
pensé hace un par
Jaiva
de
Dharma.
semanas a partir del Jaiva
Let's see if I
Dharma.
can find it really quick.
Voy a ver si es que puedo encontrarla.
So this is in
Esto
the chapter
es
on
en
Nitya
el
Dharma and
capítulo acerca
Vaishnava
de Nitya
behavior.
Dharma y el comportamiento Vaishnava,
So he's talking about Kanishta
donde se
Vaishnavas
está
or
hablando de
Prakrita
los Kanishta
Bhaktas
Vaishnavas
are those who have
o
received
Prakrata
initiation from
Bhaktas, aquellos que han
hereditary Kula
recibido
Gurus
iniciación
out of family tradition, or those who
por
feel
gurús
sentimentally
de kulas
inspired upon seeing
hereditarios,
others
por
worshiping the
tradición
deity of Sri
familiar o
Vishnu,
aquellos que
and so then worship the deity in
adoran
imitation,
deidades de la deidad
or
de
those who have
Vishnu,
accepted initiation into the Vishnu mantra with
y
Lokika
aquellos
Shraddha.
también que adoran a la deidad por
They are not on the
imitación,
category of Shuddha Bhakta.
que
These
no
unrefined
entran
devotees are on the level of Chaya
no son
Bhakti,
aceptados con iniciación de
Abhas, a
Vishnu Mantra.
shadow-like semblance of Bhakti. However, they are above those on the
Por lo tanto, no
platform
están en
of
la categoría de Shuddha Bhakta.
Pratibimba, Bhakti Abhas, a reflective,
Entonces están en la
distorted semblance
plataforma
of
de
Bhakti.
Pratimba o Bhakti
So
Abhas,
I didn't understand
un
all of those
reflejo
terms and
distorsionado de lo que
what
es
is
Bhakti.
Chaya
Entonces
Bhakti
yo no
Abhas and
entendía muy bien
Pratibimba,
lo que son
and how
estos
those relate
conceptos y
to
cómo se
persons like
relacionan con
ourselves who
personas
are
como nosotros
trying to be
mismos
sadhakas.
que están tratando de ser sadakas.
Bhaktivinoda Thakur is using
Bhaktivinoda
terms
Thakur
of Rupa
usa
Goswami
términos de
that the
Rupa
Goswami
Goswami
has applied
que
to
aplican
bhava.
a
So
Bhava, perdón.
it's a very interesting
Lo cual
subject.
es un tema muy
Bhava
interesante.
means spiritual emotion or
Bhava
ecstasy,
significa emoción
and I
espiritual o
don't think there's
éxtasis.
any book
Y no pienso que haya ningún libro,
other than Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu
aparte del Bhakti Rasamrita
in any
Sindhu,
tradition, at least there's not that I'm aware of,
en
that
nuestra tradición, o
analyzes
al menos
the nature
ninguno que yo sepa, que
of
analice esta naturaleza
ecstasy
del éxtasis
in such a detail, if you will, as Rupa Goswami has done. And that's a very extraordinary contribution, because there's all types of spiritual feelings and whatnot, and they're just not all the same, according to his analysis. And so the term pratibimba means refers to a reflection of bhava, and chai means a shadow of bhava. Rupa Goswami, when he speaks of pratibimba bhava, he is referring to, I'm going to give just a kind of broad answer here in regard to this, but he's referring to the bhava of impersonalists, Mayavadis, Amachi, or this one or that one, in a modern context, who obviously have some spiritual ecstasy, but he's looking at it in relation to what he is defining as bhava, which is the array, if you will, of the sun, to use his analogy, of prema, which is a stage of bhakti that is the goal of sadhana bhakti, and by churning that bhava bhakti, one attains prema. So the bhava, if you will, of the impersonalists will not result in that. It's only a reflection. Chai, shadow of bhava. He may give divisions of that, but pertinent to us, that is a bhava, or an ecstasy, that one can experience in the context of association with real devotees, and particularly in circumstances where the prospect for absorption in what's in bhakti increases. For example, during a festival, when there are kirtans followed by classes, followed by prasadam, by more class, and it's an intensified environment, which increases the possibility of penetrating and absorbing, getting the mind becoming absorbed and stopping, if you will, from its thinking, and experiencing some ecstasy. So this is the shadow then of actual bhava, and this is favorable. This gives us a shadow-like experience of what bhava bhakti will be like. And it's more confirming in terms of our remaining on the course, on the path, than all the philosophy that could give you good reason, if you will, to be on the path. So at any rate, Bhaktivinoda has taken those terms and he's expanded upon them to say there's Praktibimba Bhakti, there's Chaya Bhakti Abhas. He may do the same thing with Nam, for example, perhaps in another text. So now what Bhaktivinoda Thakur is also speaking about has, we have to think about some context. So he's in Bengal, and there are any number of people who are identified to one extent or another with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's tradition. Many of them perhaps just it's a family thing. It's like a family religion, like nominally in name, the Vaishnava, but without considerable or sufficient sambandha gyan underlying that. It's just nominal, and it's a go to church on Sunday, kind of Vaishnavism, and he saw a lot of that, and that's one of the reasons why you'll find a strong emphasis in Bhaktivinoda's writing on shiksha, and in his literary contribution is so immense because he felt it important that people were nominally Vaishnavas in the traditions, paribars, lineages within Gaudiya Vaishnavism that over time, over centuries, had lost considerable vitality, which is something that Krishna speaks about in the Gita. He says that sometimes the teaching that he's giving becomes obscured by time, and then he reinvests in that teaching to make it vital. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur himself is a personification of such an investment in his time, right? So he is speaking about persons in that situation who got initiated. This is their family guru. This is what we do. The guru gets dakshin, every so often, and this is, Jai Jai Guruji, and this is how we carry on. And he carries on, or she carries on, and the whole thing lacks spiritual vitality and the sambandha gyan that the more that it is in place, the more you have a discriminating bhakta. And the more that a bhakta is functioning with discrimination, the more they are moving from a kanishta or neophyte status to a madhyam or intermediate status. The intermediate status is defined by a measure of discrimination. In the Bhagavatam, for example, we find the idea that the madhyam adhikar, the intermediate devotee, avoids envious people. He gives shares teaching insight with those who are less advanced. He makes a bond, or she makes a bond with peers and reveres and serves the seniors. So this is all about discrimination, right? Which is the hallmark then of moving from, or the characteristic that distinguishes between Kanishta and Madhyam. For example, we find in the Bhagavatam an important verse, Nasta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya. Bhagavati uttama bhakti bhagavati
Uttama shloke.
bhaktir
Uttama
bhavati
shloka.
naishtiki. Bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. Yeah. So the verse speaks about, as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has commented, about the stage of Nishta. And it's characterized by, well, someone is regularly hearing the Bhagavatam and serving the person Bhagavatam. And almost then the inauspicious things, the anarthas, are removed. The basic anarthas are removed. One's practice is well informed. Rupa Goswami gives a similar explanation in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu of the three divisions, the neophyte, the intermediate, and the superlative devotee. And the measure of their faith is a determining factor, and the intermediate devotee has faith in the scripture. The neophyte devotee is not very well informed in that regard. The superlative devotee is a Shastra Nipun, a scriptural genius and expert in Shastra Yukti, reasoning about the implications of the scripture and so on and so forth. So here you find in our community, or in the Western world and in the international community created by the influence of our Paribar and the insights of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, taking upon his head the desire of Bhaktivinoda Thakur to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's tradition put on the stage with other world religions and let it shine there. And through his innovation, which included, for example, the sannyasa order, we find he sent these living mridungas, as he would refer to the sannyasis, out and about around the world. And one of them, my Guru Maharaj, Om Vishnupadesi Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, of course, created this international community. And the community is full of neophytes, obviously, in one sense, who haven't attained the stage of Nishta, in which the principal anarthas are removed and the practice cannot be interrupted by the mind or the senses, even though they may still push a little bit. Still, there was a disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur that kind of coined a term or spoke about these three stages in a more nuanced way by saying there's the Kanishta, there's the Madhyama Kanishta, and there's the Uttama Kanishta. And the Madhyam, the Kanishta Madhyam, Madhyam, Uttama Madhyam, and so forth. So we're going to three. He divided the three stages into three. So there's some gray area, if you will. And the more that our bhakti has a foundation in proper understanding of the teaching, Sambandha Gyan, is informed and involves discrimination of, for example, of discriminating who to associate with and who not, with a desire to make progress and so forth, then the more that neophyte is becoming a Madhyam Kanishta or an Uttam Kanishta. So you have in the international community a different set of circumstances than what Bhaktivinoda Thakur was experiencing in Bengal and writing about. Not that what he experiences is only relative to that time and place. It's not, but it's kind of like a super Kanishta, if you will. He calls him a Prakrita Bhakta, or he calls him just a reflection of a Bhakta or a shadow of a Bhakta, um, and so forth, which would not apply to someone, for example, who is converted to Gaudiya Vaishnavism, convinced by the logic of that and the reasoning of it, and takes it up as not as my religion, something to add to my life, but as to what my life is about, basically, which then can recede, if you will, to just it's my religion, but still there's a difference there. He or she probably knows better, knows that it's more than that, and it's not something to add on to your life. It's what your life should be, centered on, and so forth. So, does that help? Does that give a good understanding of what Bhaktivinoda's speaking about?
Yes, thank you very much. That's
okay.
I appreciate your help, and we're looking very forward to your coming.
Yeah, I'll be there in a couple of weeks, right, in North Carolina.
Yes.
People will be coming from all over the world.
Jai Baba Bas.
What else? Next question.
Valeria.
So the next question is from Valeria in Chile.
And Valeria asks, since I became a mother, sometimes a feeling of fear about death arises in me. It's not something that's constantly present, but it appears as a concern. I ask Krishna to give me health so I can accompany my children, and also that he protects them. I understand that death is inevitable, although naturally it's a sad situation. That's why I'd like to ask, how can I work spiritually on this feeling to transform it into trust and surrender to Krishna instead of letting it turn into fear?
Well, I think you have to philosophize a bit, and understand, if you will, that there's a difference between consciousness and the brain. And you are consciousness. You are part of the ground of being. You are part of the theater in which so many different movies are being played in the projector of the mind, if you will. And therefore, you can not only defeat, if you will, the fear of death, if you will, or retire, but retire. I guess I'm saying the same thing: death itself, which is it's just another moment in time that involves something that's already always going on. The body-mind complex that we're associated with and identified with is changing. It's changing. And it's moving towards a point of the change being more dramatic, which we would call death. But it's something that's going on, right, all the time. It's what happens in life. So how you live is determined, its success, by how you die. What is your not the means by which you die, but what is your state of consciousness at the time of death? So you can philosophize a bit in this way. Death is something that's happening all the time. It's not something that's going to happen at a certain point. It's happening now, and to live in the real sense of the term is to understand that and engage oneself in activities, in the mind, in thoughts about that which will endure, which is relative to the self, its spiritual trajectory and purpose in life, about Bhagawan, with whom, of course, we're associated as a servitor, and so on. And the more that we can, of course, that's what we do as a practice, and the more that we're successful in that, then the more that this fear of death evaporates. It's just another moment in time. Hmm? And you exist, we exist outside of time, outside of space, right? Hmm? That's the idea. So again, by philosophizing about it and then putting that into practice and getting experience, when you experience through your spiritual practice and absorption that you're eternal, what can I say about that? I've experienced that I'm eternal. How can I explain that to you? All I can do is tell you that. You can believe me or not. What can you say about it? But experience is very obviously confirming and powerful. And in one sense, even the philosophy of Vedanta it really derives from experience and introspection of sages and so forth, which then is shared in the form of their attempt to explain that which is beyond words, beyond time, and so forth. So, I think that philosophy of Vedanta is more powerful than death. You can retire death, and the fear of it. Obviously, your body's going to die, but death and how your mind or yourself may feel it is that can be retired, and that theoretically will be enhanced by the extent to which we apply ourselves and get experience and know experientially that I don't die, even if that experience should be then covered over by our material conditioning. We're talking now. Let's go back to Chai Bhava Bhas. One gets Bhava Bhas, and one experiences, in the least, I'm eternal. Then let me close that window. But by continued, it kind of burns a place in your mind, if you will, purifies your mind, your intelligence, your antakarana, the experience, and by collectively over time having such experience, then this fear goes away. So I empathize with you about that, but you have nothing to fear. Yeah. And Krishna says in the Gita that what you preoccupy yourself with in your mind now, yam yam vyapis param bhavam chajate ante kalevaram. What you think about, that what you become. That's practical. That's our experience in everyday life. What you think about, preoccupy yourself with, then you act accordingly, and you become. So we're all extending that same principle that we experience in everyday life to include life beyond a certain moment amongst many that we call death. It's just another moment in time. I hope that helps.
The next question is from Krishna Das.
And Krishna Prabhu asks, Dandavat Pranams Guru Maharaj. My question is in relation to some notes from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, where he has said, by attaining anartha nivritti, one's swarup is automatically awakened. But in your book, Sri Guru Parampara, he is also quoted as saying, if one only focuses on anartha nivritti, but does not pursue artha pravritti, then one will end up in nirvishesha. Could you please clarify how to harmonize these quotes of the Thakur?
Yes. What the teaching is that by focusing on artha pravritti, attaining the wealth, in this case, of prema, Prem Prayoja. This is our goal. We are focused in Krishna Bhakti on attaining prem. At the same time, we're focused on focusing our attention on the next step that we need to take in order to attain that prem. And so it may very well be the case in most instances that the majority of devotees, I should say, they want to attain prem, but they need to focus on overcoming the anarthas that are getting in the way of their appreciating the medicine, which is also food in the form of the holy name. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, the name's very generous, very powerful, but I have no taste for that, even though it is the solution to my problem. And the reason is because, well, because of anarthas. It's the second verse of Shikshastakam, paraphrased, summarized. I want to go to prem. This is my goal, but I need to focus on removing the anarthas that are getting in my way in the immediate of my practice, even being steady and consistent, ruled by spiritualized intellect. So that's how we look at a focus on overcoming anarthas in the context of a larger picture. Whereas if one is only focused on getting rid of unwanted things, would be for example, a monistic or Advaitic perspective. They have no prem to attain. Their ideal is getting rid of the negative, getting free from the negative. Our ideal is attaining the positive, in the context of which the negative will be removed, and more readily, more easily, and more comprehensively is the idea. Whereas the impersonalists, they want to just become free from the negative, and they consider that is in and of itself sufficient to know that I'm consciousness, I'm not matter, I'm not inert, without knowing anything about the relational qualities of the self. So, I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much, Guru Maharaj. That was very helpful.
Okay, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
The next question is from Braja Hari.
And Braja Hari says, Pranam Maharaj, why during the month of Kartik is the pastime in which Sri Krishna is bound by Mother Yashoda especially remembered, and not any other of his innumerable pastimes? Thank you.
Well, I think during the month of Kartik, there are many pastimes that are remembered. I think typically the Govardhan Puja appears during Kartik. For us, I think Prabhupada's disappearance, maybe Sridhar Maharaj's appearance, but Gopi Vastraharana Leela said before or after Kartik. Anyway, I don't think it's the only pastime, but it is a very powerful pastime that speaks very loudly to us philosophically. For example, it speaks to us through it illustrates, if you will, the underlying metaphysical perspective of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva. Because in that Leela, Krishna is, Mother Yashoda is trying to tie Krishna. And without him getting fatter with every 2 inches of rope that she adds, or however much rope, it always remains 2 inches too short. So although his body is referred to as medium size, the idea is everything is inside of it. And he's inside of everything. So to play that out, but this is one of the philosophical points that particular Leela illustrates. So that may be one reason that it's given prominence. Another reason is that, as I've said before, the Srimad Bhagavatam is centered on the 10th canto, which is the Leela narrative of Krishna's life. And within that, there are three aesthetic centers. There's the Vatsalya center, there's the Sakyarasa center, and there's the Madhurya Rasa center. And in a sense, Dasya Rasa is given, these are all forms of Dasya in one sense, right? But these are three distinct possibilities of, from an aesthetic point of view, emotional point of view, associating with Krishna in perfection. Go back to Dasya Rasa for a minute. For the most part, the Dasya Rasa is tinged with Sakyarasa. So three centers. And this Damodar Leela is the center of the Vatsalya Rasa center. So it's emphasized. The Brahma Vimohana Leela is emphasized in the Sakyarasa center. The Ras Panchachara, there's 5 chapters there, right? That focus on the Madhurya Rasa. So for that reason, also it has some prominence, and it is also the Leela that convinced the elders of Braj to relocate. So it's a Leela that the conclusion of the Leela is we should go to Vrindavan and reside there. From Mahavan, Gokul, we should cross the river. Too many problems happening here. Trinavarta, Putana, Shakatasura. Now these Arjun trees falling, almost killing the child, and so on and so forth. So it's a tipping point in another sense. It's kind of, in a sense, where Vatsalya Rasa is handing over to the text over to Sakyarasa. Because when Krishna goes to Vrindavan, then halfway through that 11th, is it the 11th chapter, I think? Of the 10th canto, this calf herding begins, Krishna's Sakyarasa. So it's a prominent Leela. It's you can look at different Leelas, different ways. I think that this one brings out many more points, and it's very some Leelas are more charming, more compelling than others, and this is one of them. It really Yashoda Mai is the pinnacle of Vatsalya Rasa. She's the reservoir of Vatsalya Rasa, and her love is showcased here in particular. You can have different examples of Vatsalya, but this is like very prominent, and she's in the center, right? And therefore, there's a famous verse from there that, what is the position of Yashoda Mai? It's a famous verse about Rag Bhakti. I can't bring it to memory at the moment, but her extraordinary. It's something like what Sudev says later about the cowherd boys. oh, how they could possibly, what have they done over how many lifetimes? What kind of tapasya have they performed, or what kind of pious activities to achieve this position? There's a verse like this about Yasoda in that section too. That's typically cited. Forgive me for not remembering it, but these are some of the reasons that it's given. It has the prominence that it does. You can take also the fact that who is the Muni that wrote the Dhammadarastakam. So some devotee, I forget his name, wrote the Dhammadarastakam, and so then we have something to put that Leela into song and remember it and commemorate it and so forth. So some not every Leela has a song about it that's been made available and so forth. So these are some thoughts about the prominence of the Damodar Leela. I hope that helps.
So there's a couple of follow-ups, Guru Maharaj. Chittahari just had a comment saying that he forgets where, but Jiva Goswami mentions that the Damodar Leela is the most important because it showcases Krishna's mercy. And Lalita Saki also has a follow-up question to the Kartik question.
Yes, Guru Maharaj.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I was wondering if you could please remind us why the Damodar month is considered to be Radha's month.
Because Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that of months I am Margashirsha, which is the month after the Damodar month. Therefore, it's reasoned, well, the month that precedes Krishna must be Radha's month, because Radha precedes Krishna. Radha Govinda, Radha Gopinath, Radha Damodar. Right? So that's a simple, simple explanation. But and that is invoked at times. But I think there's a statement in the Padma Purana also as to the virtues of the Damodar month. Kartik, the Kartik Vrata. I believe that Pujapad Sridhar tied together Kirtida, the name from Sanskrit of Radha's mother, with Kartik. I don't know how he did that grammatically, but he has commented along those lines and made the connection that this is her daughter, Kirtida's daughter. Kartik, maybe he looked at Kartik for Radha, I don't know. But there's you could look at Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It's mentioned because observing the month of Damodar, I believe, or Kartik, is considered one of the maybe angas of bhakti. So it would be in the second chapter of the first wave of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And I believe that in the commentary there's some verses from Padma Purana cited as to the virtues of observing bhakti. And I believe that connects the month there with Radha, but I can't recall. But those are a couple of, one of which is enough, sufficient.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
The next question is from Kishore Krishna.
Pranams, Guru Maharaj. Good morning.
Good morning to you and your friends.
So I understand that through the desire of Krishna, we are called to render a certain type of service in eternity. I understand also that at present we're influenced both by bhakti and karma to some extent. And I'm wondering, to the extent that we're influenced by bhakti, are we also called to render a certain type of service in our sadhaka deha, both for Krishna and Guru's pleasure?
Well, no harm in thinking along those lines, and in doing so, I would tie it to Gaur Leela and the very idea that our Guru Parampara is the extension of Gaur Leela, where all of the devotees are in the role of sadhakas. So some devotees reason that in Navadvip, in the apricot Navadvip, that their guru's ashram will be. I don't have an ashram, so we got a problem there. But no, that the guru will be there, and the devotees will be there, in their sadhaka dehas, all young, but resembling their present sadhaka dehas, and so forth. So I think it would be useful to look at it along those lines. Of course, the Leela in the apricot Leela in Navadvip is not going to have, book distribution or, many of the things that we do in this world in an ashram situation or as a householder. You're not going to have a separate job or something that you have to do. So you have to kind of distill it, essentially, and so forth. But it's sufficient to say that that our Guru, in our relationship with our Guru, is eternal. So what we're doing now is not non-eternal if it's service to our Guru, right? So it's part of our identity. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. I was reading Prabhupada Lilamrita, and I'm just so struck. Like, it's almost like he didn't have a choice. Like, just so called to a certain service. It's just mind blowing.
Yeah, it is. It is extraordinary. In the celebrated chapter of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai.
Right.
Just going over some of those same, as I'm writing my commentary on my Prabhupada Astakam. It's writing on the fourth verse now. Prabhupada's living in Vrindavan, writing Srimad Bhagavatam, took sannyas from Keshava Maharaj. And he'll be stepping on the boat shortly. So just a section, I guess, you're reading about out in the international community. Okay, very good. What else?
The next question is from Namananda. If you'd like to unmute yourself, Namananda.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I hear from different devotees that the second wave of bhakti is coming right now. And I have a question. Do you see it like that? Being a witness of both of them, do you see any differences or similarities?
Who says?
Who says that?
Yeah.
I don't know if you happen to know Raghunath Das, the one who is the host of Wisdom of the Sages.
He said that. Okay. It's important that I ask you that question, because this has been stated by different persons with different intentions. So, for example, there are persons in other parivars outside of the Bhakti Vinod Parivar that say, yes, in 1960s, Harinam was distributed throughout the world, but a real wave of Rag Bhakti is yet to come, and now it will come all over the world, the real, essential teaching Harinam is yes, but it's okay. It's there, it's gone. But the real thing, now a wave of Rag Bhakti will come, and it's going to inundate the world and so forth. So I've seen this in writing by members of other paribars, which this statement is a veiled criticism of the work of our paribar, out of which these persons' faith in bhakti arose. There's not a man, woman, or child, practically, barely a man, woman, or child in the international community in the 21st century that has faith in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teaching that has not arisen out of the preaching of the Bhakti Vinod Paribar. So to dismiss it in any way to lessen it is detrimental to your own progress. What to speak of in a veiled way, minimizing it, criticizing it. I mean, Nam is Chintamani. From Nam, everything will come. Nam is not different from Krishna. How can we possibly minimize the dispensation of the holy name? Right? It is out of that holy name, within the name, therefore out of it, within the name is the form, the lila, the qualities of Krishna, and so forth. It's said in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna Shakti Vine Nahi Tar Pravartana. Krishna Shakti Vine Nahi. Without Krishna Shakti, it means without bhava. And Krishna Shakti Vina Nahi. It's not possible to successfully disseminate the Sankirtan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, and then on the other side, the persons who are making the claim are like, I've seen this, I've been around for a long time in this. I'll give you an example. I used to go to Mayapur for 2 weeks and then Vrindavan 2 weeks in a month-long festival that Prabhupada had annually. And annually, when we would come to Vrindavan, so many devotees, right? And Prabhupada was there soaring like an eagle, angelic eagle leading us all. And there was one fellow who used to come as soon as Prabhupada would arrive from Radhakund, Baba from Radhakund, and he would try to meet with Prabhupada and secure a position in showing the devotees when they came to Radhakund for that part of the parikram, because we would go to different holy places, right? Go out for a day to go over down to Radhakund. So when they would come to Radhakund, he would be the guide who would say, and this is Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's Samadhi. And this is where Ravinath Das Goswami did this, and this is Radhakund, this is Shamakund. And then he would get some payment for that, right? So he was a nice devotee, but next to the eagle of Prabhupada, he was like a mosquito in spiritual stature. And I'm not trying to criticize it, I'm just stating the fact. Well, after Prabhupada passed away, and ISKCON faltered to some extent in terms of having credible spiritual authorities to guide the devotees. They've had problems with that, as you may know. Then, some persons made connection with Vaishnavas outside of our paribar. Some of them with this devotee, for example. And then they were writing about him. He's a Mahabhagwat, super, everything, that. And I had to just chuckle because I know the fellow, and I know Prabhupada. And the idea that such a person would be the next wave of bhakti and give the real teaching of Raganuga and take it all over the world. The people who have said this weren't speaking about him. I'm just giving him as an example, but a person like that, it's to someone like myself who's has experience. This is a joke. It's a bad joke. It's just foolish. So some people say that the next wave is coming in that context. That's why I asked who said it. Because Raghunath Das, he's not like that. He's a disciple of Damodar Maharaj, and he's on another level. He has a very philosophically light understanding of bhakti. Reincarnation, vegetarian, Mayavad is bad, chant the holy name, and he makes a presentation that tries to be hip and sensible and open-minded, and in many ways I can see it could be compelling for a number of people. And he's a charismatic person who once had a band of I guess a punk band or something like that that was popular, and they got they sang about Krishna consciousness at times, and so forth, got a following. So I'm not trying to take anything away from him. I'm just trying to characterize who he is, who's saying that. So what does he mean by that? I really don't know. But I can tell you this, that the wave of Prabhupada in the ocean of Bhakti Rasa was like a tidal wave. This was a tsunami. This was like, taking down the skyscrapers and the Statue of Liberty in New York from the Atlantic Ocean as it moves in. Therefore, it has been compared to Nityananda Prabhu himself, and the parallels are extraordinary. The campaign of Nityananda Prabhu at the behest of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was wide and generous, breaking it all down. It was philosophically somewhat light. Probably wrote 30 books, so you can't say it was philosophically light, but they were written in a certain way, and they weren't as technically, theologically tight and with certain details and so on and so forth, which is also characteristic of Nityananda Prabhu. His campaign was not, derived out of a learned study of the Sandarbhas, which hadn't even been written at the time. Just his enthusiasm, his power of his own bhakti. So, and to the downtrodden people also. So there's many. Sridhar Maharaj was made very many nice, comparisons. And Prabhupada, of course, was born in a Sakyarasa lineage that connected to the Saptagram area where Nityananda Prabhu was very much involved delivering that mercantile class there and so forth. So that, the comparison says much in itself. To expect that somebody like that is going to come along soon from where, it's not me. I do my part, and you may all like me and think I'm great, but what Prabhupada did and his empowerment is a unique chapter in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And to think that will be another wave will come that will match that from, and that's not happening anytime soon. I can say that. Now, that may not be what he meant by saying that. So I don't know, exactly what he meant. It seems to me optimistic. I personally think that a wave of distilling the bhakti that's out there in the international community would be useful. To go a little deeper into what it is and so forth, and in overcoming the sectarianism that's so abundant, unfortunately, which Bhaktivinoda Thakur characterized as the enemy of progress. So the sectarianism is so blatant that if you can't overcome that, how are you going to convince people that you have some solution to all the problems of life, right? I find that the community of devotees to be very ununified, and many of them absorbed in political realities of the world, especially in my country. It's so interesting to see. If you live in this country, it's kind of hard to avoid the issues that are so like abnormal from what the United States has been, for decades and decades and decades. So it's hard to avoid it entirely. So everybody's got an opinion on it, but to be preoccupied with it and put it on Facebook and kind of tie it to Krishna consciousness and one side or the other side fighting back and forth. It's an example of not really understanding, not really being seriously involved in sadhana bhakti, to be so preoccupied with that. I can give you an example to illustrate my point. Can you imagine what it was like? Try to imagine what it was like in the first quarter of the 20th century in India, as Gandhi's movement of civil disobedience and ahimsa began to gain momentum. What it was like for a young college student. This was like 200 years in the making. India's independence from the British. What to speak of hundreds of years prior to that of being occupied otherwise, to be an independent nation, free. How much a young person would be caught up with that idea? I mean, it was sweeping the whole nation. And Gandhi tied it also to religious tradition and to the Gita, ahimsa, and he had a kind of a political perspective on the Gita, which, it lends itself to, if you want to interpret it along those lines, right? So it was super compelling. And the whole nation was caught up in this. And Prabhupada himself was a firm follower of Gandhi in his own words. And once meeting Bhaktisiddhanta, he left Gandhi's movement behind. The only thing he ever said about Gandhi's movement was to criticize its short-sightedness in terms of what real freedom meant. So what was the power of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's preaching to capture young men and women, and a good number of them, right? And so we see a situation now where the lack of real dynamic spiritual power and leadership coming from realized persons has an international community of many devotees that, many of whom are drawn into the world, drawn into the worldly considerations and so forth. And they try to modify Krishna consciousness to fit into it. And in some ways they do a disservice. I'm not saying that Raghunath Das is doing that, but I'm just speaking in general. So I kind of don't see like, we're on the verge of a big wave of, Krishna consciousness going to new, levels of appreciation from the general public. In my country, in the United States, the present administration is pushing overtly or covertly for a Christian nationalism. And I personally don't want to live in a country that where Christianity is in a fundamentalist form of Christianity, if you will, is the absolute truth, and Hindus and Vaishnavas are going to be discriminated against, which is the inevitable, because that's what fundamentalist Christians do. So I don't find that to be very. If you look at the United States, which has been a place that sets examples that the rest of the world, starts to follow in some respects, it has had that kind of role to some extent for a while. Well, in the direction if it goes further in this direction towards Christian nationalism, then it's not a very good thing for spreading of Christian consciousness. Let's put it like that. So I have my doubts about that. Then again, with all due respect for Raghunath, and I don't know exactly what he means by it. So
there's a couple of comments, Guru Maharaj, from some devotees who listen to Wisdom of the Sages, and they say that, like Kanuram was saying, that he thinks he's saying something about the second wave of Vaishnavism out of enthusiasm and excitement about the current dissemination of bhakti, rather than some philosophical difference with accepted Siddhanta. And Krishna Kanai was agreeing, saying that she thinks it refers to souls like Jahnavi and so on. So I guess they might mean like the kirtan movements that are going on. They're again quite popular.
What was that part about philosophy?
That he doesn't think it's that they have some philosophical difference with accepted Siddhanta, but rather they're speaking about Raghunath.
Who doesn't?
Kanuram was saying he doesn't think that Raghunath has some philosophical difference with accepted Siddhanta, but rather he's speaking about the enthusiasm and excitement of dissemination, like you were speaking about in kind of popular circles and so on, like Jahnavi Harrison and.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure she's a nice person. I met her once. Nice devotee. But when you say second wave, you got to refer to the first wave. and good luck, calling something, a second wave. It has to have an awful lot to it to be termed as such. All glories to Jahnavi, etc. But we do our part too, and I don't consider it, another wave. Although my personal service and contribution is really not so much to form a sangha as it is to serve a sampradaya through writing. So you all have to be satisfied with that. Instead of creating a little temple here and there and so on and so forth. And my service is to do something through writing for the Sampradaya, and serve all the little sanghas here and there, and so forth. So you're connected with that, so you have to be satisfied with that. You have to give me room to do that. That's the price you have to pay to be connected with me. Okay, what else? Oh, we're over time. Right?
Over time.
Yeah, no, I've got some other things to do here, so I'll stop there. It's very nice to be with all of you this morning, and I hope to be with you again next week. Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Jai. Gaur Premanande.
Haribo. Srila Guru Maharaj ki jai. So we do have a few more questions. So everybody whose questions weren't asked, I saw there were some comments that they will be first next week. So Prima Mantra was just saying we need 2 calls per week. That'd be great, wouldn't it? So you'll be first next week, and then as always, if anyone has questions for the week, send them on, and you'll be added to the list in order. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week. Hare Krishna.